Order of operations. Just like when you're getting dressed, it's important that you follow a certain order. Socks should go on before the shoes. In mathematics, we also have a certain order we need to follow. In math, the order of operations is used by PERMDAS. For many of you, this R might be new, and we'll get to that later in this year, but I just want to add it into the order of operations so that it's not all of a sudden a completely different change. Each letter stands for something. The P stands for parentheses. And so we would do whatever's in the parentheses first. Our E would stand for exponents. And then the R would stand for radicals, which what we'll use later in this year would be the square root. And those are kind of grouped together because the order on those, whatever comes first, that's the order that you do those in. The M would be multiplication. And the D would be division. And again, the order on those, you do whatever comes first. So if I have a problem such as 5 times 3 divided by 2, multiplication would be first. So I would do this first to get 5 times 3 is 15, and then divided by 2 will give me 7.5. If my division came first, such as 8 divided by 4 times 3, I would still do the division first. One doesn't have more weight than the other. So 8 divided by 4 is 2, and then 2 times 3 equals 6. So that 6 would be my final answer on that one. And then our last two is addition and subtraction. And again, it's the same thing as the multiplying and dividing. You would do whatever one came first. So 8 plus 3 minus 4 would equal, I would add my 8 plus 3 to get 11, minus 4, which would equal to 7. And if I had 8 minus 6 plus 2, I would still do the subtraction first to get 2 plus 2 equals 4. Again, addition and subtraction have the same weight, and we just start at the beginning of the problem and we do whatever ones that we see. When we get down to addition and subtraction, the only things in that problem should be either adding or subtracting. Some examples just to kind of putting everything all together. And when we're looking at examples, we in our mind are thinking that PERMDAS. So the first thing I would do in this example here is I'm going to start out with my parentheses. And since I didn't use that 4, I'm just going to write it off to the side. Put in a parenthesis, I'm going to add whatever's inside, which in this case is 12, minus 1. And this parenthesis here, that's a way to show that it's a multiplication. We can show multiplication with that multiplication sign or an asterisk, an X. I try to stay away from the X because it starts to look too much like a variable. So I'm going to multiply here first to get 48 minus 1, so that equals 47. And then on my next problem, that little piece here, that's just a divide sign. There wasn't a divide symbol that I could use in this particular program. So another way to look at that could have been negative 2 plus 8 divided by 4. Or another way we might see that problem written is negative 2 plus 8 divided by 4 as a fraction. Because fractions are just another way to show divide. They all mean the same thing. So looking at this particular problem, this division part here, that's my highest weight on that PERMDAS. If I start at the beginning and go through, that's the first thing I'm going to see. So I'm going to start with that division and do negative 2. I didn't use it, so I just write it down. So if I don't use it, it just gets written down right below it. Same with that plus sign, I don't use it. So I'm just going to put it down there. And then I'm going to actually do the math on 8 divided by 4, which is 2. And then there's only the two things left, so negative 2 plus 2 is 0. And if I did the other problem over here the same way, just because it's a fraction, that still means it's a dividing, and I would divide by this first to get my 2, and negative 2 plus 2 would equal 0 as well. And then my last problem, this one has a couple different things in it. It has that exponent in it. This is a multiplication sign in this program. That's how that one looks. And so I'm going to start with my exponent. Remember, 4 squared is 4 times 4. It's telling me how many times I multiply 4 by itself. I'm going to write the 3 down because I didn't use it. And then my 4 squared is 16 minus 4 times 5. So if I look, the next highest weight that I have, I've done I didn't have any parentheses, I didn't have any radicals, but I had my exponent, I took care of that. In the multiplication and divide part, I have a multiply here, so I'm going to do that next. I'm not using those, so I'm just going to write those down. 3 plus 16. And then I'm going to do, it's like negative 4 times 5, or you could think of that still as a minus and do 4 times 5. And if you do that, you're just going to write that minus sign in there. And that would give me 20. And then I'll start back at the beginning. All I have left are addition and subtraction. So I start at the beginning to do 3 plus 16, which gives me 19. And then that minus 20 gets written down equals negative 1. If you're writing out each step, it's just going to make it a little bit easier instead of kind of trying to do a whole bunch of things in your head. Writing it out, showing that work is going to go through and make sure you're following your directions. On our next example, we have a fraction that looks a little bit different. It's almost like there's parentheses in there. We just don't see them. Parentheses in the top. It's called implied parentheses. We need to make sure we take care of the top of the fraction first before we end up dividing. So when I'm solving this one, I'm going to start with that 5 minus 3 to give me 2 divided by 2. And I haven't done anything with that plus 9, so I'm going to leave that there. Division comes first, so I'm going to do 2 divided by 2 to get 1. Plus 9 equals 10, so the whole thing would equal 10. The second problem on this page is that same idea. I'm not going to do anything with that 8 minus, so I'm just going to write it as part of my answer. And then I'm going to deal with the whole top of this fraction first. So I'm just going to put in my fraction bar and write in that 7 because I'm not going to do that division until I'm all done with that top. When that top equals one answer, then I'm going to be good. 4 times 2 would be first, so I have 8 plus 7. So that top part isn't all nice yet. So I'm going to do 8 minus 15 divided by 7. On this one here, again, I'm going to do my division first, so I'm going to just write out my 8 minus. 15 divided by 7, that's a decimal, but decimals are okay. It's 2.1428, and it keeps going on. We're just going to round that to 2.1. And then when we subtract 8 minus 2.1, and that equals 5.9. And again, we rounded in there. We wouldn't want to round that to 6. It kind of lets us know that they're decimals and it's not a whole integer. Hopefully that helped you out with solving some problems with order of operations.